The hearing will come to order. This is the second hearing that this committee has had on so-called usual, customary, and reasonable rates payment to the health insurance industry. Last week we heard from New York Attorney General's office, and I think you know those folks and who she was. And we conducted a year-long investigation into these practices. They had done that. And then we also heard from doctors and consumers. And today we're going to hear from the insurance industry. So let me say that I'm very pleased to welcome Mr. Andy Slavitt, CEO of Ingenix, and Mr. Stephen Hemsley, who is the CEO of United Health Group. There are a variety of United Health, but Group is the overall one. And before we go any further, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to come. I doubt this is something you're looking forward to, but you're standing up people. I've read your testimony very carefully. I have some questions about it. But you're here, and I honor you for that and respect you for that. Last Thursday, we heard some very strong language, and I think you were in Europe and couldn't be here, so we decided to bifurcate it, which has actually worked out, I think, quite well. And the consumer unions, Mr. Chuck Bell had to say that the insurance industry reimbursed consumers for out-of-network Medicare, which is medical care, which is all we're talking about, out-of-network, as a ripoff. Ms. Linda Lacewell from the New York Attorney General's Office said the insurance industry practice amount to a, quote, fraudulent and conflict of self-interest ridden reimbursement scheme, close quote. My own statement, I was utterly discreet and temperate, and I merely called the practices deceptive. Because our witnesses today are going to take issue with these characterizations, I want them to have every chance to defend themselves and explain why they don't think it was deceptive or whatever approach you wish to take. Consumers and their health insurance companies have a contractual relationship. It is not casual. Consumers promise to pay a certain premium, and in return the insurance industry promises to provide a certain level of health coverage. It's very plain, very direct, very straight ahead. So as we learned last Thursday, more than 100 million Americans have paid for health insurance coverage that gives them the option of going outside of their network, which is all we're talking about, outside of network. And obviously that would be to get care. There could be a variety of reasons for that. So let's be very clear about this. The insurers are not letting their policyholders see non-network doctor out of the goodness of their hearts. Consumers are paying for this option through higher premiums and higher cost sharing. There are many reasons American consumers decide to pay the extra money for health insurance with an out-of-network option. I've been there myself. One New York consumer we heard from last week, Dr. Mary Jerome, actually couldn't come because she's been battling cancer for a number of years, and she just physically wasn't up to it. She was going to come, but that she couldn't come. But she said that she paid this extra for out-of-network for peace of mind. Those were her words, so that she could feel that she was getting the absolute best of health care possible. What we learned at our first hearing was that while consumers held up their side of the bargain, it appeared from their testimony that insurance did not. The insurance industry promised to base their out-of-network payments on what they call the usual, customary, and reasonable cost of medical care in a particular area. Thanks to the New York investigation and other lawsuits, we now know that the insurance companies were not delivering what they promised. That was the conclusion that we reached. In Erie County, New York, for example, insurance companies were reimbursing their policyholders for doctor visits at rates that were 15 to 25% below the local prevailing rates. A federal judge recently concluded that the reasonable and customary data insurers used in New Jersey was 14.5% lower than the prevailing market rates. And the question, of course, is how does one get at these rates? Everywhere experts have looked at this data, they have found what statisticians called a downward skew in the numbers. For 10 years or even longer, this skewed data was used to stick consumers with billions of dollars that the insurance industry should have been paying, and if they had been paying, would have still been making a terrific profit. The source of this skewed data was Mr. Slavitt's company, Ingenix. Ingenix markets two usual and customary database products that every major player in the health insurance industry used to calculate what their reimbursement payments were going to be. I mean, there weren't other folks out there. At first, you had two sections of them, and then it sort of became one section, and it became what everybody used. It was sort of a monopoly of this wisdom of what would be fair to pay. Now, Ingenix is a wholly owned subsidiary of Mr. Hemsley's company, United Health Group. United Health not only owns Ingenix, but it also used the skewed Ingenix data to under-reimburse its own policyholders. Direct connection, total ownership. I am pleased that as a result of the Attorney General of New York's investigation, Ingenix and United Health have agreed to close down their database. And I've read both of your statements very carefully, and both talk about how everything's going to be so much better in the future because people are going to have a real understanding of, et cetera, et cetera. But our business on this committee is about accountability. It's about making sure that things that have not worked right in the past or have not worked fairly do not happen again. And you can't simply always look to the future. You have to sometimes prove that the past instructs why the future has to be different. And if you don't do it, maybe it won't be. In fact, it isn't all fixed yet. So I'm pleased that they've done this. And I do think accountability is important, and I think people deserve to know how these practices harmed them and who was responsible for them, and that is the goal of today's meeting. And there being no ranking member, there being no anybody, they come. We're a slow but sturdy group here. We welcome your statements. Start with you, Mr. Thompson.